Number the Seraphim girls' discovery. The crystalline spires of Zephyria Prime gleamed under the twin suns, their surfaces reflecting the morning light in patterns that would have been beautiful if not for the screams echoing from the arena below. Lirelei pressed her luminescent wings against the observation deck's barrier, her silver eyes wide with horror as another gladiator fell to the creature in the pit. The Vorthak was everything the legends claimed, and worse. Standing 12 feet tall on 6 muscular legs, its obsidian carapace glistened with the blood of its latest victim. Razor-sharp mandibles clicked together in what might have been satisfaction as acidic saliva dripped from its maw, eating through the arena floor with a hissing sound that made even the hardened spectators wince. Beautiful, isn't it? The voice belonged to Merchant Lord Kethril, whose 4 arms gestured grandly toward the carnage. His species, the Vexisthari, had been running these death matches for centuries, and his pleasure at the violence was evident in the way his scaled features twisted into what passed for a smile. Lirelei's people, the Seraphim, were known throughout the galaxy for their grace, their wisdom, and their absolute refusal to engage in unnecessary violence. They were healers, diplomats, peacekeepers, which made her presence in this blood-soaked establishment all the more unusual. "It's a monster," she whispered, her voice carrying the musical quality that made Seraphim natural negotiators. "How many have died to feed your entertainment?" Ainley. It's a monster of died to feed your entertainment." Kethril's laugh was like grinding metal. 47 challengers this season alone. The Vorthak hasn't been defeated in 3 years. We captured this particular specimen from the death world of Kithara, where even the plant life tries to kill you. Nothing can tame these beasts, dear Seraphim. They live only to hunt, kill, and consume. The creature in question had just finished dismembering what remained of a Chronite warrior, a species known for their incredible strength and battle prowess. The Vorthak's 6 eyes, each the size of a dinner plate, scanned the arena walls as if searching for more prey. When its gaze fell upon the observation deck, Lirelei felt a chill run through her feathered form. "Why did you bring me here?" she asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Your government wishes to establish a trade route through our territory," Kethril explained, his tone becoming more businesslike. "We are willing to negotiate, but we require a gesture of good faith. Your people claim to be the galaxy's greatest peacekeepers, able to calm any savage beast through your gifts. Prove it." Lirelei's wings trembled. The Seraphim did indeed possess an empathic ability that allowed them to communicate with and soothe aggressive creatures. It was this talent that had made them invaluable as mediators and healers across countless worlds. But the Vorthak were different. They were pure predator, driven by instincts so primal that no civilization had ever successfully domesticated one. "You're asking me to commit suicide," she said flatly. "I'm asking you to prove your people's claims aren't empty boasting," Kethril countered. "Besides, you won't be going in alone." That was when the doors to the observation deck opened, and the most unusual figure Lirelei had ever seen walked in. The being was clearly humanoid, but unlike any species in her extensive database. He stood only about 6 feet tall, much shorter than most sapient species, with pale skin that seemed almost fragile, and hair the color of sun-bleached sand. His clothing was simple, practical, and bore no insignia of rank or species affiliation. What struck her most were his eyes. They were blue, a color so rare in sapient species that it was considered almost mythical, and they held an intelligence that seemed both ancient and oddly naive. But it was the way he moved that caught her attention, with a confidence that suggested he was comfortable with violence. Yet his facial expression remained calm, almost gentle. "This is the human," Kethril announced with obvious disdain. "Their species was recently discovered on the Outer Rim. Barbaric creatures. Really. They actually evolved on a death world not unlike Kithara, which is why we thought they might provide some entertainment before the real show begins." The human looked around the observation deck with curiosity rather than fear, his gaze lingering on Lirelei's wings before moving to study the Vorthak below. When he spoke, his voice carried a strange accent that Lirelei had never heard before. "That's a beautiful creature," he said, apparently oblivious to the fact that the beautiful creature had just torn apart 3 professional fighters. "Reminds me of a praying mantis crossed with a tiger. The chitinous structure suggests it's adapted for both offense and defense, and those legs indicate it's probably capable of incredible speed." Lirelei stared at him. "Beautiful? That thing is a killing machine." The human turned to her, and she was surprised by the warmth in his smile. "Everything in nature is beautiful in its own way. Even predators have their place in the ecosystem." He paused, studying her more carefully. "You're Seraphim, aren't you? I've read about your species. Your people are known for their empathic abilities. And you're human," she replied, trying to process this strange being who spoke of the galaxy's most feared predator, as if it were a pet. "I've never encountered your species before." "Most haven't," the human acknowledged. "We only made first contact about 5 years ago. I'm Marcus Chen, xenobiologist and animal behaviorist. I was studying crystal formations on this planet when I heard about the situation here." He gestured toward the arena. "Kethril mentioned you might be attempting to calm that Vorthok. Mind if I ask why?" Lirelei found herself explaining the diplomatic situation, all while trying to understand why this human seemed so utterly unafraid of what was happening around him. As she spoke, Marcus listened intently, occasionally nodding or asking clarifying questions that demonstrated a keen understanding of interspecies politics. "So, essentially, you're being forced to prove your people's abilities by risking your life with a creature that has never been successfully tamed," Marcus summarized when she finished. "And if you refuse, your government's trade negotiations fail." "That's correct," Lirelei confirmed, feeling a growing sense of hopelessness. Marcus was quiet for a moment, watching the Vorthok as it settled into what appeared to be a resting position, though its eyes continued to scan for threats. "Have you considered that maybe the problem isn't the creature's nature, but the approach everyone's been taking?" Before Lirelei could ask what he meant, Kethril's voice boomed over the arena's communication system. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of various classifications, today we present a special exhibition. The Seraphim claims her people can tame any beast through their mystical abilities. Let us put this boast to the test." The crowd's roar was deafening as force fields activated around the observation deck, trapping both Lirelei and Marcus inside. The floor began to descend, carrying them down into the arena itself. "Wait," Lirelei called out, her wings beating frantically as panic set in. "This wasn't the agreement." Kethril's laughter echoed from above. "The agreement was for a demonstration. Whether the human dies first, or you do, is irrelevant to me. Entertainment is entertainment." As the platform touched down on the arena floor, Lirelei found herself standing barely 50 meters from the Vorthok. The creature had already detected their presence, its massive head swiveling toward them with predatory interest. Its mandibles began clicking rapidly, and a low rumbling sound emerged from its throat that she instinctively knew was not a good sign. "I'm sorry," she whispered to Marcus, feeling guilty that this innocent being had been dragged into her people's political problems. "I never meant for anyone else to get hurt." Marcus surprised her by placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. The contact should have been impossible due to the energy field that surrounded all Seraphim, but somehow his touch passed right through it. "It's not over yet," he said softly. "Trust me." "Over. I would Brana." The Vorthok rose to its full height, its 6 eyes fixed on them with unmistakable hunger. It had been hours since its last meal, and 2 new prey items had just been delivered directly to its den. The creature's movements were fluid, purposeful, as it began to circle them with the patience of a natural-born killer. Lirelei attempted to reach out with her empathic abilities, trying to touch the creature's mind and find some common ground for communication. What she encountered made her stumble backward in terror. The Vorthok's consciousness was like touching molten metal, pure aggression, hunger, and pain. There was intelligence there, but it was alien beyond anything she had ever experienced, focused entirely on survival and the endless need to hunt. "I can't reach it," she gasped, her silver eyes wide with fear. "It's too alien, too violent. There's no peaceful center to connect with." The Vorthak had apparently tired of stalking and was preparing to attack. Its powerful legs coiled beneath it like compressed springs, and its mandibles spread wide enough to bite a person in half. Acidic saliva dripped onto the arena floor, sending up wisps of toxic smoke. That was when Marcus stepped forward. The movement was so unexpected that both Lirelei and the Vorthak paused. The human walked calmly toward the creature, his hands visible and empty, his posture relaxed but alert. He made no threatening gestures, carried no weapons, and showed no signs of fear despite approaching certain death. "Easy there, big guy," Marcus said in that same calm tone he had used earlier. "I know you're stressed. This place is wrong for you, isn't it? Too many loud noises, too many strange smells, nowhere to hunt properly." The Vorthak tilted its massive head, apparently confused by this prey item that was approaching voluntarily. Its mandibles continued to click, but the sound was different now. Less aggressive, more uncertain. Marcus continued walking until he was within striking distance of the creature, close enough that one swipe of those razor-sharp claws could disembowel him. Instead of attacking, however, the Vorthak seemed genuinely puzzled. It lowered its head to study this strange being more closely, its 6 eyes focusing on Marcus with an intelligence that Lirelei had missed before. "You're not really a mindless killing machine, are you?" Marcus murmured, his voice carrying clearly in the suddenly silent arena. "You're scared, confused. This isn't your home. These aren't your hunting grounds. And every day brings new pain because nothing here makes sense." The clicking sounds changed again, becoming almost conversational. Marcus slowly raised one hand, palm open, allowing the Vorthak to see that he carried no weapons. The creature's massive head moved closer, near enough that Marcus could feel its breath on his face. Lirelei watched in absolute amazement as the most feared predator in known space gently bumped its forehead against the human's outstretched hand. The crowd above had fallen completely silent. Even Kethril seemed stunned by what was happening below. This was impossible. The Vorthak was a creature of pure instinct, incapable of forming bonds with other species. Yet somehow, this human had accomplished in minutes what no one else had managed in years of trying. Marcus began to move his hand in slow, gentle strokes along the creature's carapace. The Vorthak's rumbling changed to something that sounded almost like purring. If purring could be produced by a creature the size of a small building. "How?" Lirelei whispered, her voice barely audible. Marcus glanced back at her, that gentle smile returning to his features. "Fear recognizes fear," he said simply. "And sometimes, what looks like aggression is really just pain that doesn't know how else to express itself." The Vorthak settled into a resting position. Its massive form curled around Marcus like a protective barrier. For the first time since its capture, the creature seemed genuinely at peace. Its 6 eyes slowly closed as Marcus continued his gentle ministrations, and the clicking sounds faded to occasional, contented murmurs. Above them, the crowd was beginning to recover from their shock, voices rising in confusion and disbelief. Kethril's voice, when it came over the communication system, was strained with barely controlled fury. "Impossible," he snarled. "No one has ever tamed a Vorthak. This must be some kind of trick, some human technology we don't understand." Marcus looked up toward the observation deck, his expression hardening slightly. "No trick," he called out, his voice carrying clearly through the arena's acoustics. "Just understanding. Your people have been treating this creature like a monster, when all it needed was someone who could recognize its pain." The implications of what had just happened were staggering. If a human could tame a Vorthak, what else might their species be capable of? Throughout the galaxy, creatures deemed too dangerous or aggressive to handle were used in gladiatorial combat or simply destroyed. But if Marcus was right, if these beasts simply needed understanding rather than force, Lirelei approached slowly, her empathic senses now detecting something she had missed before. The Vorthak's mind, while still alien, was no longer the blazing furnace of aggression she had encountered earlier. There was still predator instinct there, but it was tempered by something else. Gratitude, perhaps, or simply relief at finally being understood. "How did you know?" she asked Marcus, settling beside him and the now peaceful creature. Marcus was quiet for a moment before answering. "My species evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill us," he said eventually. "We learned early that survival meant understanding our predators, not just fighting them. Sometimes the fiercest creatures are just the most frightened." Above them, the political machinery of the galaxy was already beginning to turn. Representatives from dozens of species were probably placing urgent calls to their governments, reporting that humanity might possess abilities that could revolutionize interspecies relations. The Seraphim trade negotiations had just become the least important item on anyone's agenda. But in the arena, surrounded by the gentle rumbling of a creature that had found peace for the first time in years, none of that seemed to matter. Marcus continued his careful ministrations, while Lirelei marveled at the change in the Vorthak's mental state. Whatever happened next, this moment, had changed everything. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were capable of far more than anyone had imagined. The ripple effect. 3 days after the incident in the arena, the space station orbiting Zephyria Prime buzzed with activity unlike anything in its 200-year history. Ships from every major civilization in the galaxy had arrived, their representatives demanding answers about the human who had tamed the untamable. Lirelei found herself in the uncomfortable position of being both witness and translator. Her people's natural diplomatic abilities had made her the de facto liaison between the various species and Marcus, who seemed completely unbothered by the attention he was receiving. In fact, he appeared more interested in the station's hydroponics bay than in the political circus surrounding him. "The growth patterns here are fascinating," Marcus said, examining a flowering vine that the Altarian delegation had brought as a gift. "This species appears to have developed a symbiotic relationship with at least 3 different types of beneficial bacteria. The root structure suggests it's adapted to low-gravity environments. But the cellular density is actually higher than what you'd find in most ground-growing plants." Ambassador Thexral, whose crystalline form glittered with nervous energy, shifted uncomfortably. Like most of his species, the Zerathi valued efficiency and directness in all communications. Marcus's tendency to discuss xenobotany when they were trying to negotiate interspecies treaties was challenging. "Dr. Chen," Thexral said, his voice carrying the harmonic resonance that marked his emotional state as frustrated. "While we appreciate your scientific curiosity, there are more pressing matters to discuss. Your demonstration with the Vorthak has raised questions throughout the galaxy about human capabilities." Marcus looked up from the plant, blinking in apparent confusion. "Questions? Such as?" It was Lirelei who answered, having spent the last 3 days fielding increasingly desperate communications from various governments. "They want to know if your ability to calm aggressive creatures is a natural human trait, if it can be taught to others, and if your species represents a potential threat to galactic stability." "A threat?" Marcus's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Because I helped a scared animal feel better?" Ambassador Voltar, representing the militaristic hegemony of Cronus, leaned forward in his chair. His species stood 9 feet tall on average, with naturally armored skin and a culture built around strength and conquest. The fact that a supposedly primitive human had succeeded where Cronan warriors had failed was a source of considerable embarrassment for his government. "The creature you helped had killed 47 trained fighters," Voltar growled, his tusks gleaming as he spoke. "Some of those were elite Cronan shock troopers, beings trained from birth for combat. If your species possesses abilities that can neutralize our strongest warriors—" "I didn't neutralize anything," Marcus interrupted mildly. "I just listened." The Vorthak was in pain because it was separated from its natural environment and social structure. Imagine if you were taken from your home and forced to live in a box for years, with nothing to do but fight for the amusement of others. Wouldn't you be a little aggressive too? The silence that followed this observation was profound. Most species had some concept of psychological distress But the idea of extending such consideration to a creature like the Vorthok was revolutionary. Throughout galactic history, dangerous predators were either destroyed or contained. The notion that they might be suffering and could be helped was entirely foreign to most civilizations. Dr. Yelneth, the Seraphim lead scientist who had arrived on the morning transport, finally spoke. Her species' natural grace made her movements seem like a dance as she consulted her tablet. Dr. Chen, our preliminary analysis of the arena footage shows that the Vorthak's brain chemistry changed dramatically during your interaction. Stress hormones dropped by 70%, and we detected the presence of what appear to be bonding compounds, typically associated with pack behavior. That makes sense, Marcus nodded. Vorthaks are actually highly social creatures in their natural habitat. They hunt in family groups and maintain complex territorial relationships with neighboring packs. Isolating one would be like. He paused, searching for an appropriate comparison. Like forcing a seraphim to live without any form of empathic contact for years. Lirelei shuddered at the thought. Her people's empathic abilities weren't just a useful tool. They were essential to their mental health. A seraphim cut off from emotional connections would slowly go insane. But how did you know this? She asked. Your species has only had contact with the galaxy for 5 years. The Vorthak homeworld of Kithara is restricted to all but the most experienced xenobiologists, and even they rarely return with useful data. Marcus's expression grew distant, and for a moment, something darker flickered across his features. My homeworld, Earth, has creatures that share many behavioral patterns with the Vorthok. We call them various names. Tigers, lions, wolves. For most of our history, we thought of them as monsters to be feared or killed. It wasn't until relatively recently that we learned they were just trying to survive in a world that was becoming increasingly hostile to their way of life. Ambassador Zekthara of the Centauri Collective spoke for the first time. Her species were natural merchants and information brokers, and her presence at these talks suggested that significant economic interests were at stake. Dr. Chen, are you saying that your species has successfully domesticated apex predators on your homeworld? To varying degrees. Yes, Marcus confirmed. Though, domesticated isn't quite the right word. We've learned to coexist, to understand their needs and respect their territories. Some species have even formed partnerships with humans. Dogs, for instance, have been our companions for thousands of years. The implications hit the room like a physical force. Every major civilization in the galaxy maintained prison worlds where dangerous creatures were contained or eliminated. The idea that these beasts might instead become allies was staggering in its scope. Voltar was the first to recover. You're claiming that humans have formed military alliances with predatory species? Not military alliances, Marcus corrected. Partnerships. Mutual benefit relationships. A human and their dog hunting together are more effective than either would be alone. The human provides tools and strategy, while the dog provides enhanced senses and physical capabilities. Dr. Yelneth was frantically taking notes. And this partnership is stable? Long-term? My family's dog lived with us for 14 years before she died of old age, Marcus said softly. She helped raise my children, protected our home, and was one of the most loyal friends I've ever had. When she passed, we held a funeral for her. The concept of showing such respect to a non-sapient creature was virtually unheard of in galactic society. Most species considered themselves so far above other life forms that meaningful relationships were impossible. Lirelei found herself thinking about the Vorthok, still resting peacefully in the modified habitat that had been constructed for it. In the 3 days since Marcus's intervention, the creature had shown no signs of aggression. In fact, it seemed almost depressed when Marcus wasn't around, brightening noticeably whenever the human visited. There's something else, she said slowly, drawing attention from the assembled diplomats. The Vorthok responds differently to various species now. It's still wary of most visitors, but it shows no aggression toward children or elderly beings. It's as if it's learned to distinguish between threats and non-threats. That's not unusual, Marcus commented. Intelligent predators are excellent judges of intent and capability. The Vorthak probably recognizes that cubs and elderly beings pose no danger, so there's no need to maintain a defensive posture around them. Ambassador Thexral's crystalline form pulsed with agitated colors. Dr. Chen, you speak of these creatures as if they're capable of complex reasoning and emotional responses. Our xenobiologists have classified them as barely above the intelligence level of sophisticated predatory plants. Your xenobiologists have been studying them in captivity, Marcus replied. Isolation and stress can severely impact cognitive function in social species. It's like trying to judge Seraphim intelligence by studying one that's been cut off from all empathic contact for years. The comparison made everyone in the room deeply uncomfortable, particularly the Seraphim representatives. The idea that their research methods might have been fundamentally flawed was difficult to accept. Dr. Yelneth set down her tablet and fixed Marcus with an intense stare. Dr. Chen, would you be willing to demonstrate your techniques with other allegedly dangerous species? That would depend on the circumstances, Marcus answered carefully. I'd need to research each species thoroughly, understand their natural behaviors and social structures, and I'd want guarantees that any creatures I work with would be properly cared for afterward, not returned to combat situations. What kind of guarantees? Zekthara asked, her merchant's instincts clearly engaged. Suitable habitats that mimic their natural environment, appropriate social groupings when applicable, and meaningful occupations that fulfill their psychological needs. A pack hunter needs to hunt, even if it's just simulated prey in a controlled environment. Voltar slammed his fist on the table, causing several smaller species representatives to jump. You're talking about revolutionizing our entire approach to dangerous fauna. Do you have any idea what the economic implications would be? I'm talking about treating living beings with respect and understanding. Marcus replied calmly. If that happens to have economic implications, that's not really my concern. The Cronin ambassador's expression grew dangerous. Your concern or not, young human, the ripple effects of your actions are already being felt across the galaxy. 3 separate prison worlds have reported uprisings among their contained creatures. The beasts seem to sense that change is coming. Lirelei felt a chill run through her feathered form. Uprisings? Dr. Yelneth consulted her tablet again, her face grim. Prison World Designation 77 Alpha has gone completely silent. Their last transmission mentioned unprecedented coordinated behavior among the Shadowclaw population. Prison World 12 Beta is requesting immediate evacuation due to what they're calling organized resistance from the Void Serpents. Marcus stood abruptly, his calm demeanor finally cracking. You're keeping intelligent species in prison worlds? For how long? Centuries in some cases, Ambassador Thexral answered, matter-of-factly. It's the only safe way to prevent them from threatening civilized worlds. The human's face went through a range of expressions. Shock, horror, and finally settling into something that made every being in the room take a step back. For the first time since they'd met him, Lirelei could sense real anger radiating from Marcus. And it was terrifying in its intensity. You've been torturing entire species for centuries because you were too arrogant to try understanding them, Marcus said, his voice deadly quiet. And now you're surprised that they're angry? They're dangerous, Voltar began. They're prisoners, Marcus snapped. Of course they're dangerous. You've given them every reason to hate you. The room erupted into chaos as various representatives tried to defend their government's actions, while others demanded immediate reforms. Through it all, Marcus stood silent, his jaw clenched, and his eyes holding a cold fury that reminded everyone present that humans had evolved on a death world. When the shouting finally died down, it was Lirelei who spoke first. Dr. Chen, what would you recommend we do? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, clearly struggling with his emotions. When he finally answered, his voice was carefully controlled. First, We need to establish communication with the prison worlds that are still functional. Find out exactly what's happening and whether it's possible to negotiate. Second, we need to begin immediate research into the natural behaviors and needs of every species currently in captivity. And third, he looked directly at Voltar. We need to prepare for the possibility that some of these species are going to want justice for what's been done to them. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. If even a fraction of the galaxy's most dangerous predators had developed human-level intelligence and organization during their centuries of imprisonment, the coming conflict could devastate entire systems. But as Lirelei watched Marcus's face, she saw something else beneath the anger. Determination and hope. Somehow, this human believed that even this crisis could be resolved through understanding and communication. She just hoped the galaxy would survive long enough to find out if he was right. Number: The Great Awakening. 6 months after Marcus Chen tamed the Vorthok, the galaxy teetered on the edge of war. Prison World 77 Alpha had fallen completely silent 3 weeks ago. Prison World 12 Beta had been evacuated after its Void Serpent population had somehow learned to operate the facility's own security systems against their captors. Most shocking of all, Prison World 3 Gamma had begun broadcasting messages in perfect galactic standard, demanding immediate negotiations for the release of all captive species. Lirelei stood on the bridge of the hastily assembled diplomatic vessel Times Harmony's Edge *, watching the swirling blue-green atmosphere of Cathara growing larger on the main screen. Beside her, Marcus studied a tablet containing everything known about Vorthak's social structure and communication patterns. It wasn't much. Most previous expeditions to the Death World had focused on survival rather than research. Are you certain about this approach? Admiral Kethvar asked for the dozenth time. The Draconai military leader's reptilian features showed clear signs of stress, his normally pristine scales dulled with worry. We're talking about making contact with potentially the most dangerous concentration of apex predators in known space. Marcus didn't look up from his tablet. The alternative is a war that could destroy half the galaxy. The prisoners aren't just angry, they're organized, intelligent, and they have nothing left to lose. Military force won't solve this. Military force is all some of these species understand, Admiral Kethvar argued. The Shadow Claws of Prison World 77 Alpha have killed thousands of sentient beings over the centuries. They're not going to be interested in peaceful negotiations. They killed thousands of beings who were keeping them imprisoned, Marcus corrected, finally looking up. There's a difference between unprovoked aggression and justified rebellion. Lirelei could sense the tension radiating from everyone on the bridge. The past 6 months had been a crash course in uncomfortable truths about galactic civilization. Species that had been dismissed as mindless beasts were demonstrating tactical intelligence that rivaled any military academy graduate. Creatures that had never shown signs of sapience were somehow coordinating complex operations across multiple star systems. The breakthrough had come from an unexpected source. Dr. Yelneth's research team had finally managed to establish rudimentary communication with the Vorthak that Marcus had calmed. Through a combination of empathic contact and pattern recognition, they had discovered that the creature possessed not just intelligence, but memories, stretching back centuries. It remembered every member of its pack that had been captured, every attempt at escape that had failed, and every fallen comrade who had died in the arena. More disturbing, it remembered everything that had been done to its species across multiple generations. The Vorthaks weren't just individuals, they were part of a collective memory that spanned their entire race. Every atrocity committed against them had been preserved and passed down through some mechanism that xenobiologists still didn't understand. Approaching the outer atmosphere, reported Navigation Officer Yexthi, her forearms dancing across the control panels with practiced efficiency. Kithara, Control is requesting our identification and stating our business. Marcus and Lirelei exchanged glances. The fact that Kithara even had a control system was surprising enough. That it was operating in galactic standard was revolutionary. This is the diplomatic vessel Times Harmony's Edge *, Admiral Kethvar. spoke into the communications array. "We're here under joint authorization from the Seraphim Council, the Terran government, and the Galactic Cooperation Treaty. We request permission to land and establish communication with Vorthok leadership." The response came back immediately, and the voice speaking was unmistakably Vorthok. A series of clicks, growls, and harmonic tones that their computer was somehow translating in real time. "Welcome, Sky Swimmers. The Pack of Packs has been expecting you. Land at the coordinates being transmitted. Be warned. Approach with weapons active, and you will be treated as raiders." Lirelei's empathic senses were overwhelmed by the conflicting emotions radiating from the bridge crew. Fear was dominant, but it was mixed with curiosity, hope, and something she was surprised to recognize as shame. The revelation that seemingly primitive creatures possessed their own language, government, and communication technology had forced many species to confront some uncomfortable assumptions about intelligence and civilization. The landing coordinates led them to a clearing that had obviously been prepared for their arrival. Ancient trees had been carefully removed to create a landing pad, but the work had been done in a way that showed respect for the surrounding ecosystem. Younger trees had been left standing where possible, and the cleared area had been shaped to follow natural drainage patterns rather than imposing geometric precision on the landscape. "Sensors are detecting multiple large life forms in the surrounding area," reported Tactical Officers Rendall. "At least 30 Vorthoks, possibly more. They're maintaining what appears to be a perimeter formation." "A honor guard," Marcus said, surprising everyone. "In pack hunter societies, important visitors are escorted by the strongest members of the community. It's a sign of respect, not a threat." As the ship settled onto the prepared landing pad, Lirelei could see the Vorthoks emerging from the forest. They were even more magnificent in their natural environment than the caged specimen she had first encountered. Their obsidian carapaces gleamed in the dappled sunlight, and their movements showed a fluid coordination that spoke of centuries of evolution as pack hunters. What was most striking, however, was their obvious intelligence. They wore what could only be described as ceremonial decorations, intricate patterns carved into their carapaces, and polished stones hung on woven plant fiber. Several carried tools that appeared to be both functional and artistic, combining practical engineering with aesthetic beauty. "My gods," whispered Dr. Yelneth, who had insisted on joining the diplomatic mission despite the obvious dangers. "They have a material culture. They're not just intelligent. They're civilized. I hope." The largest Vorthok approached the ship as the landing ramp extended. It stood at least 14 feet tall, and the scars on its carapace told of a lifetime of battles. But its movements were careful, deliberate, and unmistakably peaceful. Marcus was the first down the ramp, showing the same fearless confidence he had displayed in the arena. The massive Vorthok clicked something that the translation system rendered as a formal greeting, and Marcus responded with a careful attempt at the same clicking pattern. The conversation that followed would later be studied by xenolinguists throughout the galaxy. The Vorthok introduced itself as Prime Hunter Kreshthal, speaker for the Pack of Packs and keeper of the Great Memory. Through a mixture of translated clicks and gestural communication, it became clear that the Vorthoks had been aware of galactic civilization for centuries, but had chosen isolation to avoid the fate that had befallen so many other species. "We watched from the deep forests as the sky swimmers took our pack brothers," Kreshthal explained, its translated words carrying undertones of ancient sorrow. "We learned their words and ways, but kept our own hidden. When they finally came for us in great numbers, we had no choice but to fight." "The great memory holds all pain," another Vorthok added, approaching from the forest edge. This one was smaller, its carapace marked with intricate geometric patterns that seemed to shift in the changing light. "Every pack brother taken, every sister who died in the pain cages, every clutch young who never learned to hunt properly because the wise elders were stolen away." Lirelei felt tears streaming down her face as her empathic abilities gave her a glimpse into the depth of trauma that these creatures carried. Generations of loss, centuries of watching their people disappear into the galactic prison system. all preserved in perfect detail by their collective memory. "We're here because we want to make it right," Marcus said simply. "My species. We've learned that intelligence takes many forms. We were wrong to treat your people as animals." Kreshthal's 6 eyes focused on Marcus with an intensity that made everyone else step back. "You are the one who gentled pack-brother Thex Ral in the death cage place. The memory holds this event. You showed kindness to one who had forgotten trust. He was in pain," Marcus replied. "No one should suffer alone." What followed was the most remarkable diplomatic negotiation in galactic history. The Vorthax didn't just want their imprisoned people returned. They wanted acknowledgement of what had been done to them, changes in galactic law to prevent similar atrocities, and a voice in the galactic government that had spent centuries treating them as property. But they also offered something unprecedented. The Great Memory contained detailed information about every species that had been imprisoned alongside them. The Vorthax had spent decades learning to communicate with shadow claws, void serpents, crystal wasps, and dozens of other allegedly mindless predators. They offered to serve as mediators, helping to establish communication and peaceful resolution with species that the galaxy had written off as irredeemably hostile. "The pain-touched ones on the prison worlds grow desperate," Kresthal explained as the sun began to set over Kithara's magnificent landscape. "They smell change in the wind currents of space, but they do not trust that it will bring healing. If the sky swimmers continue to approach with weapons and fear, there will be war scent instead of peace scent." Admiral Kethvar shifted uncomfortably. "Some of the prison worlds have already been compromised. The creatures there have killed thousands of guards and staff. Guards and staff who kept them in cages for centuries," the decorated Vorthak pointed out. "Pack law says that one who steals young has forfeited protection. But Pack law also says that vengeance must not consume the future hunt. We can teach the pain-touched ones to distinguish between those who harmed and those who would heal." Over the following days, a framework began to emerge. The Vorthax would help establish communication with the rebellious prison worlds, serving as neutral mediators between the galactic government and the escaped prisoners. In exchange, all imprisoned members of their species would be returned to Kithara. The prison system would be completely reformed, and previously non-sapient species would be given representation in galactic government. Dr. Yelneth worked tirelessly to document everything they learned. The Vorthak's understanding of interspecies psychology was incredibly sophisticated, developed through centuries of observing different alien races and learning to predict their behaviors. Their material culture was elegant and sustainable, showing a deep understanding of ecological balance that put most civilized worlds to shame. But it was their capacity for forgiveness that amazed Lirelei the most. These beings had suffered unimaginable trauma, yet they were willing to work toward a peaceful resolution, rather than seek revenge. When she asked Kresthal about this, the great creature's response was both simple and profound. "Hate scent spoils the hunt for all future generations," the Prime Hunter explained. "We choose to hunt for understanding instead of hunting for pain. The memory will hold what was done, but it will also hold what we chose to do when we had the power to choose." The breakthrough came on their final day on Kythara. The Vorthax had agreed to accompany the diplomatic mission to Prison World 3 Gamma, where the most organized resistance was taking place. As they prepared to depart, Marcus made a request that stunned everyone present. "I'd like to stay," he announced. "There's so much more to learn here. And I think humanity might have more in common with the Vorthax than with most galactic civilizations." Kreshthal's mandibles clicked in what the translation system identified as amusement. "The pack brother, from far hunting grounds, wishes to learn the deep forest ways? This brings honor to the memory." And so it was that Marcus Chen, the human who had shocked the galaxy by taming its most feared predator, became the first galactic ambassador to choose voluntary exile on a death world. His reports from Kithara would revolutionize xenobiology, and his unique insights into predator psychology would make him instrumental in the peaceful resolution of the prison world crisis. As the Times Harmony's Edge Times departed Cathara with its Vorthak passengers, Lirelei watched the planet's swirling clouds recede and reflected on everything that had changed. The galaxy would never be the same. Species that had been dismissed as monsters were taking their place as equals in galactic society. Ancient prejudices were being challenged, and new possibilities for understanding and cooperation were opening up every day. But perhaps most importantly, the crisis had taught every civilization in the galaxy a profound lesson about the nature of intelligence and the importance of looking beyond surface appearances. As the Vorthaks liked to say, the scent of wisdom could not be detected by those who refused to breathe deeply. The journey to Prison World 3 Gamma would be the first test of this new understanding. But Lirelei felt something she hadn't experienced in months: genuine hope. With Marcus's insights, the Vorthak's mediation skills, and the galaxy's newfound willingness to listen rather than judge, perhaps they really could build a better future for all sapient species. The stars ahead seemed brighter somehow, full of infinite possibilities for beings brave enough to challenge their assumptions and open their hearts to understanding. The age of the prison worlds was ending, and the era of true galactic cooperation was about to begin.